What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest stars completely dismantles a sitting governor on live television? Well, you're about to find out, because Halle just delivered one of the most brutal takedowns in recent political history. And it all happened in front of millions of viewers. Before we get into this absolutely wild exchange, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me whose side you're on after you watch this whole thing, because trust me, you're going to have opinions. So here's the setup. Halle was invited to speak at a major California town hall event focusing on economic policy and opportunities for working families. Governor Gavin Newsom was hosting the event, and it was supposed to be one of those feel-good moments where celebrities and politicians come together to talk about making change. But from the moment Halle walked onto that stage, you could tell something was different. There was this energy in the air, this tension that you couldn't quite put your finger on. Newsom started off with his usual polished delivery, all smiles and confidence. We're so honored to have Academy Award winner Halle here with us tonight. Halle, you've been such a powerful voice for change in this state, and we really appreciate you taking the time to be here. Halle nodded, but her expression was stone cold. Thank you for having me, Governor, though I have to say, I'm not here to be honored. I'm here to talk about some very real problems that your administration hasn't addressed. You could see Newsom's smile falter for just a second. He clearly wasn't expecting this. Well, that's what we're here for, right? Open dialogue, tough conversations. That's how we make progress. Progress, Halle repeated, and there was something sharp in her voice. Let's talk about that word, because I've been living in California for decades, and I've watched this state become increasingly unaffordable for the very people who make it run. The people who work in our restaurants, who take care of our children, who keep our communities functioning. Where's the progress for them, Governor? Newsom shifted in his seat, preparing to launch into what was probably a rehearsed response. But Halle wasn't done. I'm not looking for talking points right now. I'm looking for actual answers. Because while you've been promoting California as this beacon of progressive values, regular people are being priced out of their own neighborhoods. Small businesses are closing. Families are leaving. So I'm genuinely asking, where is the progress? The audience was completely silent. This was not what anyone had expected from this event. Newsom cleared his throat. Halle, I understand the frustration. The housing crisis is something we've been working on aggressively. We've allocated billions of dollars toward affordable housing initiatives. We've streamlined the permitting process. And we've incentivized development in key areas. Billions of dollars, Halle said, leaning forward. And yet, the average rent in Los Angeles is still completely out of reach for most working families. So where is that money actually going? Because from where I'm sitting, and from where millions of Californians are sitting, it's not translating into actual relief. Newsom tried to regain control. These are complex issues that don't have overnight solutions. We're dealing with decades of restrictive zoning laws that were in place long before I took office, and a housing market that's been distorted by multiple factors. Governor, I'm going to stop you right there, Halle interrupted, and the sharpness in her tone made everyone sit up straighter. You just did exactly what politicians always do. You gave me a list of excuses instead of taking responsibility. I didn't ask you about what previous administrations did or didn't do. I asked you about what your administration is doing right now, today, to help people who are struggling. The moderator tried to step in. Perhaps we should move on to some questions from the audience. But Halle held up her hand. No, I think we need to stay on this topic, because this is exactly the problem. Every time someone asks a difficult question, politicians pivot, they deflect, they blame someone else, or they try to change the subject. But the people of California deserve direct answers. Newsom's jaw tightened. You could see he was starting to get defensive. With all due respect, Halle, I think you're oversimplifying incredibly complex policy challenges. Governing isn't about sound bites or emotional appeals. It's about working within systems, building coalitions, and making incremental progress. Incremental progress, Halle repeated, and she actually laughed. But it wasn't a friendly laugh. Governor, people are living in their cars. Teachers with full-time jobs can't afford to live in the communities where they teach. That's not a that's reality. And while you're talking about incremental progress, real people are suffering real consequences. The tension in the room was palpable now. Newsom leaned back, trying to project calm authority. I hear you, and I've met with those families. I've seen those struggles firsthand. But what I'm trying to explain is that the solutions require systemic change, which takes time. How much time? Halle shot back immediately. How much time do people have to wait while they're being evicted, while they're working 3 jobs just to afford a 1-bedroom apartment, while they're making impossible choices between rent and food? Give me a number, Governor. How many more years of incremental progress do they need to endure? Newsom paused, clearly frustrated. That's not a fair question. Why not? Halle pressed. You're asking people to keep faith in your leadership. They deserve to know what the timeline looks like. They deserve to know when they can expect actual relief, not just press releases about initiatives and task forces. Because policy implementation doesn't work on Hollywood timelines. Newsom snapped back, and immediately you could tell he regretted it. Halle's eyes narrowed. Excuse me, the audience gasped. Even the moderator looked shocked. Newsom realized he'd just made a serious mistake. I didn't mean it like that. What I meant was, but Halle cut him off, and her voice was ice cold now. No, please, finish that thought. Tell me more about Hollywood timeline. Because it sounds like you're suggesting that because I work in the entertainment industry, I somehow don't understand real-world problems. Is that what you're saying, Governor? Newsom tried to backtrack. Not at all. I have tremendous respect for your advocacy work. I was simply trying to point out that government processes are different from other industries. Government processes, Halle said slowly. Let me tell you something about processes, Governor. I came to California as a young woman with nothing. I worked every terrible job you can imagine. I struggled. I fought. I know exactly what it's like to worry about making rent, to wonder if you're going to make it. So don't you dare dismiss my questions as some kind of Hollywood naivety. The room erupted in applause. People were on their feet. Newsom looked genuinely rattled now, something you rarely see from such a polished politician. He took a sip of water, trying to compose himself. You're right, he finally said. That was inappropriate, and I apologize. But Halle wasn't letting him off that easy. I don't want your apology, Governor. I want answers. Newsom nodded slowly, clearly trying to reset the conversation. Okay, fair enough. What specifically do you want to know? Let's talk about your homelessness strategy, Halle said, not missing a beat. You've been governor for years now, and the homeless population has continued to grow. I drive through Los Angeles, through San Francisco, through Oakland, and I see encampments that look like third-world countries. This is California, one of the wealthiest places on the planet. How is this acceptable? Newsom took a deep breath. It's not acceptable. That's why we've invested over $15 billion in homeless services and housing. We've created programs. We've expanded mental health services. We've worked with municipalities to develop comprehensive solutions. $15 billion, Halle repeated. And the problem has gotten worse. So either the money is being wasted, or the strategy is fundamentally flawed. Which is it, Governor? You could see Newsom getting more uncomfortable. It's not that simple. The homeless crisis has root causes that go beyond just providing housing. We're dealing with mental illness, substance abuse, economic displacement, and a broken healthcare system. I agree with all of that, Halle said, but here's my question. If you know what the root causes are, and you have billions of dollars to address them, why isn't it working? Where is the accountability? Because from the outside looking in, it seems like there's this massive bureaucracy that's consuming resources without producing results. Newsom's voice took on a defensive edge. We've housed tens of thousands of people. We've expanded treatment programs. We've created pathways out of homelessness. But this is a crisis that's been building for decades, and it can't be solved overnight. There you go again with the decades excuse. Halle fired back. You keep pointing to the past instead of talking about what you're doing differently. If the old approach wasn't working, why are you continuing it? Why aren't we seeing radical new strategies? Why aren't we seeing innovation? We are innovating, Newsom insisted. We've launched pilot programs. We've experimented with different models. We've brought in experts from around the world to study our approach. Halle shook her head. Governor, I don't care about pilot programs. I don't care about experts studying approaches. I care about results. The people living on the streets care about results. So tell me, what measurable results have your policies produced? Not promises, not initiatives, actual, tangible results. The moderator tried again to intervene. Maybe we should hear from some of the audience members who have questions. But both Halle and Newsom ignored him. They were locked in now, and neither was backing down. Newsom leaned forward. You want results? Fine. We've reduced street homelessness in certain areas by 30%. We've increased access to treatment beds by 40%. We've shortened the time people spend in temporary shelters before moving to permanent housing. In certain areas, Halle pounced on that phrase. So you're essentially playing whack-a-mole. You clean up one neighborhood and the problem moves somewhere else. That's not solving homelessness, Governor. That's just relocating it. Newsom's face flushed. What would you have me do? Halle, what's your solution? It's easy to criticize from the sidelines, but governing requires making tough choices with limited resources. Don't you dare try to flip this on me, Halle said, her voice rising. I'm not the one who ran for governor promising to fix these problems. You did? You asked for this job. You asked for this responsibility. And now that you're being held accountable, you're getting defensive and trying to make it seem like I'm the one being unreasonable for asking basic questions. The audience erupted again. People were cheering. Some were shouting support for Halle. Others were calling for Newsom to respond. The energy in the room had completely shifted. This was no longer a polite town hall. This was a confrontation. Newsom stood up from his chair, and for a moment, everyone thought he might walk off the stage. But instead, he just stood there, trying to project authority. I'm not getting defensive. I'm trying to have an honest conversation about the realities of governance. Then be honest, Halle challenged, standing up as well. Stop hiding behind bureaucratic language and political spin. Tell the people of California the truth. Tell them why. despite all the money, despite all the programs, despite all the promises, their everyday lives haven't gotten better. Tell them why they should believe that anything is going to change. There was a long, heavy silence. The two of them stood there, facing each other, and you could feel the entire room holding its breath. Finally, Newsom spoke, and his voice was quieter now, more measured. The truth is that California is facing challenges that no state has ever faced before. We're dealing with climate change, economic inequality, a housing shortage that's been decades in the making, and political gridlock that makes it nearly impossible to pass meaningful reform. I'm doing the best I can with the tools I have. That's still not taking responsibility, Halle said, but her voice was calmer too. You're listing obstacles, but every leader faces obstacles. The question is, what are you doing to overcome them? Are you willing to take political risks? Are you willing to challenge powerful interests? Are you willing to admit when something isn't working and try something completely different? Newsom sat back down, and after a moment, Halle did too. He rubbed his face, looking genuinely tired for the first time all evening. You want me to admit that we haven't fixed everything? Fine, I admit it. You want me to say that some of our programs haven't delivered the results we hoped for? I'll say it. But what I won't do is pretend that these problems have easy solutions, or that anyone else could do significantly better given the same constraints. But that's exactly the problem, Halle pressed, not letting him off the hook. You're already limiting yourself with this idea of constraints. What if the constraints are the problem? What if the entire system needs to be When I read about your policies, all I see is trying to work within broken systems. Where's the boldness? Where's the vision? Bold ideas don't mean anything if you can't implement them, Newsom countered. I could promise everyone free housing tomorrow. I could promise to end homelessness in 6 months. But those would be lies. I'm trying to do the hard work of actually making things happen, which requires compromise and patience. Compromise, Halle said, and there was that edge in her voice again. Let me ask you something, Governor. When you compromise, who are you compromising for? Because from where I sit, it looks like you're compromising the needs of regular people to appease wealthy donors, powerful unions, and entrenched interests. Am I wrong about that? The room went completely silent again. This was the kind of direct accusation that politicians usually never have to face in these staged events. Newsom's expression hardened. That's a serious allegation. It's a serious question, Halle shot back. And I notice you're not answering it. You're just telling me it's serious. So let me ask it more directly. Have your major donors influenced your policy decisions on housing and homelessness? Yes or no? Newsom shifted uncomfortably. Every politician has donors. That's how campaigns work in this country. But my decisions are based on what I believe is best for California, not on what any particular donor wants. That's not a yes or no answer, Halle pointed out, and the fact that you can't give me a straight answer tells me everything I need to know. The moderator finally managed to jump in. I think we need to move forward with some questions from our audience members who have been waiting patiently. But Halle held up her hand again. One more thing, Governor, because I think this is important. You talk about compromise and working within systems. But I want to know if you've ever considered that maybe you're the problem. Maybe the reason things aren't changing is because you're too comfortable, too concerned with maintaining your political future, too worried about offending the wrong people. Have you ever asked yourself that? Newsom stared at her for a long moment. Every single day, he finally said, and for the first time, he actually sounded genuine. Every single day I question whether I'm doing enough, whether I'm being bold enough, whether I'm letting political considerations override what's right. But here's what I've learned. You can have all the bold ideas in the world, but if you can't build a coalition to support them, if you can't navigate the legislative process, if you can't convince voters to back you up, then those ideas die, and nothing changes at all. So you're saying the system prevents real change, Halle said, which means you're admitting that your approach, working within that system, is fundamentally limited. I'm saying that change is hard, Newsom replied. I'm saying that it requires more than just good intentions and passionate speeches. It requires strategy, persistence, and yes, sometimes compromise. Halle leaned back in her chair, studying him. You know what I think, Governor? I think you came into this job with big dreams and bold ideas. I think you genuinely wanted to make a difference. But somewhere along the way, you got swallowed up by the machine. You started caring more about political survival than about the people you were elected to serve. And now you're so deep in it that you can't even see it anymore. That's not fair, Newsom said, but there was less conviction in his voice now. Maybe it's not fair, Halle acknowledged. But I didn't come here tonight to be fair. I came here to speak truth. And the truth is that California is in crisis. And the people leading this state, including you, are failing to meet the moment. You're managing decline instead of driving transformation. You're protecting the status quo instead of disrupting it. Newsom rubbed his temples. So what do you want me to do, Halle? Seriously, if you were in my position, with all the political realities I face, what would you do differently? First, I'd stop making excuses, Halle said, immediately. I'd stop blaming previous administrations. I'd stop talking about decades-long problems. and I'd take full ownership of my role in either solving or perpetuating those problems. Second, I'd identify the most powerful interests blocking reform, whether that's real estate developers, public sector unions, or wealthy homeowners who oppose new housing, and I'd challenge them directly. I'd use my platform to call them out by name and rally public support against them. That's political suicide. Newsom interjected. Maybe, Halle said, or maybe it's leadership. Maybe California needs a governor who's willing to risk their political career to do what's right. Third, I'd declare a state of emergency on housing and homelessness. Use every executive power available to cut through bureaucratic red tape and actually build housing at the scale needed. Not pilot programs, not studies. Actual buildings where people can actually live. Newsom shook his head. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple, Halle countered, but it's necessary. And the fact that you keep calling it impossible tells me you've already given up. You've convinced yourself that the system can't be changed, so you're just trying to survive within it. But the people of California don't need a survivor, Governor. They need a fighter. The audience was completely captivated now. Some people were nodding along with everything Halle said. Others looked uncomfortable, like they weren't sure who to agree with. Newsom looked at the moderator, then back at Halle. You paint a very compelling picture. But let me ask you something. Where were you during the election? Where were you when I was actually campaigning on these issues? Because it's easy to show up now and criticize, but real change requires sustained engagement, not just viral moments. Don't you dare question my commitment, Halle said, her voice sharp again. I've been fighting for these communities for years. I've donated money, I've used my platform, I've shown up when cameras weren't rolling. The difference between you and me is that I'm not asking people to elect me. I'm not making promises I can't keep. I'm just demanding that the people who did make those promises actually keep them. Newsom sighed heavily. Look, I get your frustration. I really do, and maybe you're right about some things. Maybe I have become too cautious. Maybe I have let political considerations override bold action. But I'm also dealing with the state legislature that's often dysfunctional, a court system that strikes down policies left and right, and a public that wants radical change but isn't always willing to accept the trade-offs that come with it. So you're blaming voters now? Halle asked incredulously. No, Newsom said quickly. I'm just saying that democracy is messy. People want lower taxes and more services. They want affordable housing but don't want it built in their neighborhoods. They want to end homelessness but don't want treatment facilities near their kids' schools. Navigating those contradictions is part of my job. Then educate them, Halle insisted. Use your platform to help people understand those trade-offs. Make the case for why difficult choices are necessary. Don't just hide behind the contradictions as an excuse for inaction. That's leadership, Governor, helping people see beyond their immediate self-interest to embrace solutions that benefit everyone. There was another pause. Newsom looked out at the audience, then back at Halle. You're not going to let me have the last word here, are you? Not when there are millions of people still waiting for solutions, Halle said firmly. The moderator finally stepped in, decisively. I think we need to hear from some of our audience members now. We have people who drove hours to be here and ask their questions. Halle nodded. That's fine, but I want to say one more thing. Governor, I didn't come here tonight to embarrass you or to score political points. I came here because I love California. I love this state, and it breaks my heart to see what's happening to it. So I'm not your enemy. I'm just someone who refuses to accept that the fifth largest economy in the world can't figure out how to house its own people. We can do better. You can do better. The question is whether you will. Newsom looked at her, and for a moment, something shifted in his expression. You're right, he said quietly. We can do better. I can do better, and I appreciate you holding my feet to the fire, even if it's uncomfortable. This is the kind of conversation we need to be having, even when it's hard. Good, Halle said. Then let's keep having it. Not just tonight, but every day, until things actually change. The audience erupted into applause. People standing, some cheering, some whistling. The moderator quickly moved to take questions from the crowd, but everyone in that room knew what they had just witnessed. This wasn't a typical political event where everyone plays nice and nothing real gets said. This was a genuine clash of perspectives. A moment where someone with nothing to lose politically challenged someone with everything to lose. And whether you agreed with Halle Berry or not, whether you thought she was too harsh or exactly right, you couldn't deny that she had just done something remarkable. She had forced one of the most powerful politicians in America to face uncomfortable truths, to defend his record, to acknowledge his failures. So there you have it. Halle Berry absolutely roasted Gavin Newsom on live television, and the whole thing was captured for millions to see. If you made it this far, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below answering this question. Do you think Halle Berry was right to go after Newsom this hard, or do you think she crossed the line? Let me know in the comments.